Welcome to Glen by the Bay at Veterans Memorial Park. You are witnessing a work in progress, but we would like you to be aware of the park, the project goals, and the resources that we hope you might revisit and utilize repeatedly. This entire park consists of approximately 150 acres of various contiguous lots owned by Galloway Township, mostly procured through the Atlantic County Open Space Program. The southern portion of the park is the border of the city of Absecon. This entire property is located within the New Jersey Pinelands National Reserve of the National Park Service, the wider designation beyond the New Jersey Pinelands.
The Lenape Native people called this area Lenape-Hoking, or homelands of the Lenape, part of an area that stretched from Connecticut to Delaware until European colonialism. Lenape people spent summers around here utilizing the bounty of the bays, marshes, and uplands. You are also standing in the village within Galloway known as Conover Town, one of the oldest immigrant family enclaves in the area. The Dutch immigrant family by the last name of Van Colenhoven, later Americanized to Conover, arrived here in 1625 to live and use the rich resources of the soil and the bay. Most of this park has been farmland, but also very involved in the commerce of the bays. The family of Thomas Glen II were the last folks to live here in the Glen House, starting in 1985. His wife, Anne Marie, and son, Thomas Glen III, known as Tim, are still living in the area and have become partners again in restoring this beautiful property that they once called home. This current project came about through a combination of events. The Galloway Township Environmental Commission released a video and lecture program in 2018 called 12 Tenacious Invasives, with the help of our New Jersey Native Plant Society Southeast Chapter co-chairs Jack and Jesse Connor, and the grant funding of the New Jersey Association of Environmental Commissions. In 2020, the Go Green Galloway team released a video and a program called Friends Along the Mullica, funded by the Sustainable Jersey organization and containing some 25 speakers from 8 towns, including Galloway and Absecon. This film and project caught the attention of the National Park Service, and they contacted us to ask if there was anything that they could do to further the cause of the Mullica collaboration. It just so happened that we were looking at the condition of the parks in Galloway and saw how badly invaded the grounds had become with invasive species and non-native species here at Glen by the Bay. We got initial permission from the Galloway Township manager to work on 3 areas within this park, each with very different conditions. The U.S. National Park Service's Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program agreed to help us and immediately put together an extensive work plan and a coalition of amazing partners. The National Resources Conservation Service, or NRCS, did soil testing throughout the park and later provided a plant grant last fall for the second garden enclosure of shrubs and warm season grasses through the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The Xerces Society awarded us the perennial plant plugs to do the first garden enclosure starting last July. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has provided trees, shrubs, and technical assistance since the beginning in the woods next to us and in other sites within the park. Another grant from Sustainable Jersey has provided us with this pavilion, benches, printing of brochures, and signage that has yet to be completed, and more. So for more technical information regarding the gardens and other plantings, I would turn it over to Barbara Fiedler.
Did 2 things out here at the Glen property, and that was, one was to rid some of the area of the invasive species plants that are growing in the woods all over, and the other was to create a perennial pollinator garden area that would act as a model for businesses and homeowners to learn about native plants for their yards. and properties. This is a total educational project. We have labels on the plants at this point so that people, as they walk through, can see what they're looking at. The labels have pictures on them so that even if they're not blooming, they'll see what they do look like when they're blooming. There are a lot of things had to fall into place to make this happen. This pavilion that we're sitting under at the moment was partially paid for through a Sustainable Jersey grant, and the township helped with the rest of the money for this pavilion, which we are thankful for. The benches came out of the grant. All the other site work here came out of the grant. Go Green Galloway invested in the fencing for around the gardens. There's a lot of wildlife out here, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to do this out here, was because there is a lot of wildlife, and they thrive, and we have a nice place for them to live. This first garden that we're in right now is a garden that was funded through the Xerces Society. What they do is provide plugs for whatever size your garden is. There's 3 different size gardens that are awarded. We have the smallest package here, which was 550 plugs, and they came from Pinelands Nursery. And they are all native plants, native to this area. They're all valuable pollinator plants, which is the whole point of this garden. It's a pollinator garden. So we thank Xerces Society for that. As we go through the garden, you can see various things that are in bloom at this time. We have a succession of plantings so that things will be blooming at different times of the year. As you can see, it is thriving at this point. Things have expanded well beyond those 50 plugs that we put in of each variety of plant. Xerces designed the garden choices, and that's what that was based on, was a succession. There are things that bloom very early in the spring, things that bloom early summer, midsummer, late summer, and then fall. They find the plants when it's their time to come in and feed, and in some cases the plants are host plants where they will lay their eggs. We planted in big groups of plugs of same variety for the reason that it's much easier when a pollinator is flying around looking for plants to nectar on. They can see very easily that there's a big grouping of white beard tongue, and they really want that right now. So yeah. The other garden, Xerces had input in also, but it was monies that came through from the USDA. The difference is that the other garden, that has a lot of shrubs. We also have a variety of perennials mixed in with the shrubs. And then over on the other side, we have spiderwort, which is the purple flower. Beyond that, on the right side, there's some asters that are coming up. They won't bloom until much later in the season, probably August. Beyond that is milkweed and butterfly weed. The butterfly weed is getting ready to bloom now. The milkweed has some buds on it, so that won't be long before those things are out. Beyond that is the Monarda fistulosa, which is like a purple bee balm, and that will be blooming in July. And then just past that is purple coneflower. They have buds on them right now, so they'll be bloomed pretty soon. All the way against the fence is lanceleaf coreopsis, which is in full bloom right now. Pretty spectacular yellow flowers. There's a million different types of bees and pollinators that we get in here. We've had a lot of butterflies already. We had American ladies come through. They were on migration route, and they came through here about a month ago. And we've had spicebush swallowtails already. We just heard that monarchs are in the area, so we're watching for those because the butterfly weed and the milkweed are about to bloom, and I'm sure we'll have them very soon. It has exceeded our expectations, I have to say. It's so successful, but the plants are spreading like crazy, and we will be splitting some of the plants off and donating them to other organizations that are looking to start these gardens. So it's been very, very successful. We've been so fortunate that we have so many volunteers that have come and helped out, not only with the planting and the maintenance of these gardens, but also what's been going on in the woods, ridding of invasive species. We never would have been able to accomplish what's been accomplished out there without all these volunteer groups that have been coming out. There's very few weeds that are going to grow up, especially in this garden because it's so closely planted. Even with us harvesting a lot of the plants like we're going to do after they're finished blooming, it still will be so full that there won't be any chance for weeds to come in. The other garden, on the other hand, because there are a lot of shrubs in there and there's a lot of space around the shrubs, we have had to do some maintenance work over there with some weeding. But we have a good weeding group and we've taken care of it, and eventually it won't need that either over there.
So at the gardens, one of the things we did to try to keep the deer and the small rodents out was to build the fencing around the gardens and even put the lower wood down into the ground to stop burrowing. And the deer don't seem to like the pink ribbon that flutters around. But also the aromatic plants that we put around the perimeter to keep deter some of the small mammals, that the rabbits and woodchucks and so forth. We planted in thyme, chives, blue mist flower, blue hyssop, catmint, mountain mint, and lavender and others, several species of lavender, and also some commercially available little spiked cubes that contain essential oils that are repulsive to some of the deer and other critters. So that's why we did that around the outside edge of the gardens. Walking through Annie's Woods is a work in progress, as I mentioned before. This area was almost impenetrable, looking a lot like what's left along the border with the homes in Absecon. Many trees have been lost and damaged, as you can see by the many stumps, disfigured trees, and plant debris in the canopies. The main culprit has been Chinese wisteria, which sends vines up around the tree and both pulls the tree down while smothering the tree's vegetation with its own in the canopy. Other tree killers are Asian bittersweet and English ivy. And though technically not invasive, wild grape and massive amounts of greenbrier also pulled down on trees and covered over their foliage. On the forest floor, the invasives that smothered the understory have been Chinese privet and autumn olive. Again, greenbrier infiltrates everything and veils over small bushes and trees. And the root systems are intense. Resprouting will be monitored as we go forward. Trees remain that are not native, particularly Norway maple, which shades out many understory shrubs and other plants. English holly is quite plentiful, but native American holly is also present and now coming back here with a greater chance to compete with a more open canopy. In most all cases, we are protecting new plantings with cages, as deer are prone to eating almost anything, either to the ground or pulling the plants completely out or nibbling and sampling. As you may know, deer prefer native plants to invasive plants, further giving invasives an advantage. Until policies change on harvesting and managing deer, we have no choice but to protect young plants in this way. Walking along the quiet path, we note the creek that occasionally floods the woods and the meadow with tidal salt water from Reed's Bay. Also notice that fresh water flows down and over the quiet path, diluting salt water and allowing many trees that are not particularly salt tolerant to continue to grow. Water testing has shown that there is a significant hydrostatic pressure from north to south on the property, for now holding saltwater intrusion away. In the open, quiet field along the quiet path, there has been an invasive shrub removal of autumn olive mostly. The large dominant tree is a Norway maple, which will eventually be removed. This field has existed in this form for many years, most likely as an area of shellfish processing, as well as a drying and sorting field for the various types of salt hay and meadow grasses cut along Reed's Bay and Absecon Bay. From this location, these products were shipped to market. We have a map from 1838 which indicates a road to water that follows this very pathway from Route 9 to the water of Reeds Bay and this quiet field. At the end of the shell path, you notice fiddler crabs and salt hay overwash, phragmites, bayberry bushes, groundsel bushes, etc. From this point, you can see Long Beach Island, the fish factory, Rutgers University Marine Field Station, Little Beach, which is Galloway Township's seashore, Brigantine, Atlantic City, Down Beach communities, and Absecon. There is a significant history along these meadows. In the Revolutionary colonial times, there was a salt works which took salt water from the bay and took out the salt for food preservation. And that was the site of skirmish during the Revolutionary War, where the British came in rowboats to try to destroy the salt works, as they did quite often to starve people out. But they were repelled by armed workers at the salt works here, which was known at that time as the Friendship Salt Works. The barge ditch, which is man-made, major feature out here is called Wenzel's Barge Ditch. There was extensive meadow banking, which was where a lot of the other grooves in the meadow occurred, so that the meadows would become dry and additional farmland and grazing sites for cattle. We also see the remnants of mosquito ditching from the early 1930s and 40s, where the thought was if you drain the marshes, you would have fewer mosquitoes. That was not proven to be quite the case, and there are different methods that are used to this day. This site at the end of the shell path is also a release area for turtles that have been grown at Stockton University from eggs harvested from roadkill turtles. And there was small boat access here at the time of the Glens having a dock and a small building out here. The site approved to the right of the Wenzel's Ditch will soon be an osprey platform. NJDEP property to the north, Absecon border, and NJDEP property to the south bound this area. As we go back past the site of a former log cabin, now just a concrete pad in the grass, a kit structure used to exist here as a log cabin used by the Glenn family and their children. And it needed to be removed, unfortunately, due to unsafe conditions. In the Pinelands upland site, we have a well-drained sandy soil situation, native meadow grasses and habitat for docile ground nesting cellophane bees primarily. We are restoring some trees and shrubs to the site and testing many different species. And we will try to restore meadow function here with an annual mowing only to keep out unwanted woody growth. This area and the open space to the west were once used by small aircraft and helicopters, mostly attendees of the high-profile golf tournaments at Seaview Country Club. The owner previous to the Glenn family was a nationally ranked golfer and also the golf pro at Seaview Country Club. His name was Bruce Coltart, and he actually gave lessons in these fields, and there are still hundreds of golf balls in the woods all around here. It was also, previously to that, a horse farm, and hence the barn. The current house and barn were built around 1954. Glen by the Bay is a really good addition to Veterans Memorial Park. It's been called a hidden gem here, and as it comes back to life, we count on folks to volunteer within the community. We hope to teach students, and we hope that people will learn a lot about the great gifts that this land gives. So we look forward to making Glen by the Bay a place that you'll be comfortable to come out and visit any time of the year, and also to enjoy the other sports events and things that happen within Veterans Memorial Park.